Automotive, I fix everything.
This is a 2019 Mercedes Sprinter chassis with a 3500 XD engine. Today's project is maintenance A on this Mercedes RV with 10,000 miles. The first step is to replace the cabin air filter. The cabin air filter is located on the passenger side above the footwell. I chose the upgraded carbon filter that's designed to remove odors as well as particulates from the air. The side-by-side comparison has the original filter on the left and the upgraded carbon filter on the right with its thicker pleats. Although the standard filter can be removed without removing the floor mat, you may find it easier if you did so. The carbon filter with its substantial pleats requires removal of the floor mat. A quarter turn of the fasteners is all that's required. To remove the mat without tools, lift the mat at the corner and slide your finger along the seam to disengage the fasteners. Beneath the mat, you'll find a tool tray equipped for roadside assistance. Release the plastic latches from the T-shaped plastic cover and fold it down out of the way. Keep in mind there is a drain hose attached. The filter is installed vertically near the center cowl. Carefully align the plastic cover and ensure it seals properly and the latches are engaged. Next, we'll move on to the engine compartment. The secondary hood latch is located to the left of the front grille emblem. With the hood secured with the prop rod, I can begin the oil change. The oil is accurately tracked with a fluid monitoring system, so I never looked for the dipstick before. It took a few minutes to find, and I got quite a surprise. Mercedes deleted the dipstick and put a plastic cover over the dipstick tube. I purchased John Dow's largest consumer model oil extractor, but I soon found the tubes were not adequate to drain the oil from a Ford 6-liter Power Stroke diesel engine. So I contacted the customer service at John Dow and they sent me this upgrade kit free of charge. To begin the oil draining process, I inserted the largest plastic tube that would fit into the dipstick spout. Then I applied air pressure to the vacuum reservoir and opened the pressurization valve. Lastly, I opened the valve on the drain hose and monitored the progress. The oil extraction method takes longer, but there are several benefits. Because the oil is extracted from the top side, the vehicle does not need to be jacked. The drain plug does not need to be removed. And probably best of all, there's no oil pan to drain or spill. The process is nearly self-contained from start to finish. I used my free time to inspect the brake fluid reservoir, the coolant reservoir, and top off the windshield washer fluid and the DEF fluid, the diesel exhaust fluid. These are all part of the Maintenance A requirements. When the oil stopped flowing, I shut off the valve and used the air pressure to evacuate the hose. Next, return the dipstick cap to the dipstick tube. To prevent spills, I loaded the evacuator immediately into the truck and secured it with a cargo strap. The oil filter wrench I'm using is Automotive Tools. It's a CNC manufactured aluminum cap with a precision tolerance specifically for the Mercedes engine. I'm using an extension and a swivel to remove the oil filter without removing the air filter assembly. In the future, I would remove the air filter assembly and replace the air filter while the oil is draining. After I loosened the oil filter, I slipped a plastic bag over the filter housing and pulled the filter straight up into the bag and closed the end. This prevented drips onto the engine. Here's the part number I used, and note that the oil filter is made by the Mann Filter Company of Germany. Companies such as Rock Auto sell the Mann oil filter as an OEM part. The plastic bag contained the oily mess as I removed the spent cartridge from the plastic filter housing. I removed the support silo from the center of the filter and cleaned it prior to reinstallation. I oiled and replaced both O-rings on the filter housing. The paint can contains the old oil filter so it can be recycled. I reinstalled the silo and installed a new filter on the filter housing. Because the air filter is required on maintenance A, it would be easier to remove the air filter housing prior to replacing the oil filter. The torque specifications are called out on the oil filter cap at 25 Newton meters. Mobile 1 is the recommended oil, called out on an underhood label. I chose 0W40 because it has the widest temperature range. ESP, Emission System Protection Formula, is highly recommended. The oil level monitoring system is very accurate and has a reading in ounces. I used a measuring cup to accurately meter the final fill level. The fuel filter is located beneath the air filter and nestled tightly in a cavity in the intake manifold. The first step is to pinch the tabs to remove the connector from the mass airflow sensor. Loosen the worm drive clamp with a socket or screwdriver and disconnect the turbocharger intake tube. To remove the smaller electrical connector from the air filter housing, I twisted a small screwdriver to release the white pre-lock, then I pressed down to release the locking tab. Now I turn my attention to the other side of the air filter to release the battery disconnect. I press the locking tab to release the battery disconnect. Release the lower end of the cold air intake tube first. Lightly press the locking pin to release the duct. The forward support arms are held in place with rubber grommets. Lift the arms one at a time to release it from the grommets. Using the forward arms as handles, lift the air filter and pull it forward to release it from the rear forks. Rest the air filter housing upside down to allow easy access to the electrical harness clip. A scribe or small screwdriver can be used to release the locking barbs. Set the air filter aside and begin working on the turbo inlet. An automotive trim tool was used to unseat this turbo inlet tube. To prevent damage to this plastic tube, it was unclipped and then tied loosely back with a bungee cord. Extra care must be taken to remove this plastic clip from the water drain line. A scribe inserted in the detent will release it. Be careful not to lose it. The pliers I'm using are Lyle spark plug boot pullers, but I use them for removing seated hoses. To break the seat, twist the hose back and forth and then press forward. This latch is quite stuck, so I'm using a Rainbird sprinkler adjuster to lift this latch over the detent. I also needed to apply pressure side to side on the connector to break the seat. This is a close-up view of the locking tab. There's another electrical connector to be removed, and here's a close-up of releasing the locking tab. The Click R pliers are used to remove and install the clamps used specifically on Mercedes fuel systems. I created a special close-up shot so you could see how the pliers operate. Placing the notched jaw on the right-hand side of the image with the bump will release the clamp. Reversing the pliers and placing the straight jaw against the bump will install the clamp. Placing the notched jaw on the right-hand side of the image with the bump will release the clamp. The clamp's tension is released, but the clamps are still seated to the hose and must be freed up using some twisting motion with my special pliers. To free the fuel line, the clamp must be slid over the internal barb of the fuel pipe. I'm using a trim tool to dislodge the clamp. With the clamp slipped out of the way, I was able to gain access to the fuel lines with the spark plug boot pliers and rotate them to break those free also. But they needed some additional help with the use of the trim tool. The fuel filter is held in place with a band strap. To remove the fuel filter, loosen the screw with a Torx T30 bit. The filter is a tight fit. I found the easiest way to remove it is with an unthreading motion. Man Filter is the OEM, the original equipment manufacturer for Mercedes-Benz. The filter installs easier with a little rotation. The filter is a tight fit. Gently snug the clamp. I started the fuel hoses by hand and seated them with the spark plug boot pliers. I slid the clamps back to their original position and locked them in place with the click R pliers. The fuel filter electrical connector was tight coming off and tight going on. I used both thumbs to press it squarely and seat the seal. Next, I installed the water separator drain line and the plastic clip. I reconnected the electrical harness and pressed in the safety lock. I performed one last inspection of all the connections before I installed the turbo inlet pipe. As the clamp began to grip, I rotated it up to the top to allow easier adjustment. It's now time to remove the bungee cord and place the tube back into its pocket. I replaced the air filter prior to reinstalling the housing. Here's the model number I used. It's a MAN air filter. This is the OEM for Mercedes-Benz. The perimeter screws require a T20 Torx bit. Do not use a ratchet or power tools, as damage to the plastic housing will result. A T20 Torx screwdriver is supplied with the toolkit under the passenger side floor mat. Rest the air filter housing upside down and install the electrical harness clip. Engage the plastic forks on the rear of the air filter with the rubber mounts. Reinstall the fresh air inlet pipe and seat the forward mounts. Drop the battery disconnect into the slotted channel and lock it in place. Starting on the left-hand side in the back, connect the air snorkel, plug in the mass airflow sensor and the temperature sensor, and then press in the secondary latch and listen for the click. Perform a final inspection before the truck is started. Last and most importantly, the truck is started and the fuel filter is inspected carefully to be sure there are no leaks. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something along the way. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below. And remember, subscribers are always welcome.